Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night session of the Sports Crib, brought to you by the Sports Crib Network. Let's get all the little commercials out of the way here. You can find me on Facebook at JEKing3, on Twitter, and you can find the Sports Crib as well as West Coast Steeler Fan. And if you'd like to donate and subscribe, look down there in the corner of your YouTube and you'll see the Cash App, $ JE King 3. So now that we have all of the commercial stuff out of the way, let's get to the show. Very exciting game last Sunday. And let's see, Reggie's joining us as well as Demetrius. Don is, I think Don might be like your Pistons there. The last I heard
on an airplane somewhere, right?
No, the last I heard down there in San Antonio, the power was out.
Oh, wham. It's cold in Dallas. Wham. What is it, 50? I don't want to hear it.
No, it's actually snowing in Dallas.
Wham.
I mean, aren't your Pistons, are they still stuck there? Or are they in DC?
Last I heard, they were still in Dallas. They couldn't get
out. Yeah. How you doing today, Reg?
Cannot complain, man. Happy to be back. Happy to be back with you guys, man.
Glad to have you back. It was enjoyable last week. I was hoping we would see you again.
Yeah, man. Ready to make it happen.
Yeah, Bill will try to join us a little bit later, so we'll see how that goes. But guys, let's kind of get started here, and we'll start with a little bit of basketball. We are going to have to talk about it for the next 3 or 4 months, so we might as well get used to it.
You mean we're not going to talk about Aaron Rodgers every week for no real reason? That's not the plan. That's not the
plan. Hey, you know, I did everything I could this week, to avoid trying to put Aaron Rodgers in a conversation. So, we'll see how
the thoughts are going to be how the Lions sent his ass into retirement, right?
Oh, wow.
You gotta know that's where I'm going. No, I'm not.
Well, one of my favorite players, Russell Westbrook, passed Gary Payton for the 10th all-time assist. Are you surprised to see Russ in the top 10, Reggie?
Not really. Especially because of the pace that he was on with all that triple-double pace. You had the 1 year, I think it was the Big O that had the 1 year of the triple-doubles. Then Russ has done it now, 3 years or so with the triple-doubles? So assists are part of the triple-double. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that we're here. Would be more surprising, to be honest with you, and this is going to sound crazy, it's not a shot at Westbrook, but if he's actually able to carry a team to a championship in some capacity, that would be more surprising than him accumulating any kind of stat, because he's a stat stuffer. He accumulates stats, no problem.
Well, I think it may be snowing in hell right about now. Demetrius, look who's here.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, good Lord. Mr. Scott. Okay. All right, let me give you my Westbrook thoughts. Let me give you know what? So, Reg, here's the deal. Secretly, Mr. Scott and I love each other. Okay. On the podcast, we do a whole different thing. So you're going to walk away thinking he don't like me and I don't like him. And neither of those things are factually accurate. The reality is, he reps Minneapolis, and I respect it. He reps the hell out of Minneapolis, like I do Detroit. And that's all it is. Our teams play each other a bunch. And we'll dip into baseball if we need to, wherever it needs to go. And I respect a guy like you. I've seen you twice. You repped your school. I love that picture behind the back of your I love how the guy reps his city. I will never say I will take shots, but it's all in good fun. Because when he shows up, that's a shot. When he shows up, he didn't show up the week the Lions roasted Minnesota. I noticed that.
It's not a bad year to be a Minnesota fan, man. It's not a horrible year for it.
No, but he's fair. He will rip his own dudes if they don't meet his standards. Okay. I respect his game. We're just from different cities, and that's all it is. No matter what it might look like in a given moment when he says something really bad about Detroit, I know he loves me. I know it. So, good to see you, sir.
It's good to see my nemesis.
All right, so Westbrook. Here's the deal with Westbrook.
Well, before we go there, I have to really just go back to some in the past, how giddy and how excited you were, how giddy you were about Michael Pineda, how giddy and excited, where we had seen Michael Pineda's act.
Right.
Twins signed him, gave him $10 million. They said the first $5 million you don't even have to play, just get in shape. That's all you don't even have to play. We'll give you $5 million to sit out the whole year to just get in shape. And then what does he do? Comes in, gets injured right away, gets his $5 million.
Oh.
He goes to your team,
yeah.
Same thing. But then he has the nerve at the end of the year get upset because they released him before a contender can sign him. As if a contender. So yeah. So I'm glad to see my nemesis. I'm glad to see he's back in the game. I mean, where would you be? Where would Muhammad be without Joe Frazier? Where would they be without each other?
So Reggie, what you just saw is he went back damn near a year and pulled out a baseball argument from damn near a year ago.
He led with that too. He came
with that. He came in hot. He didn't even prep nothing. Okay. Westbrook. Longevity records in general fail to impress me. But this is not just he's a stat stuff. Reggie used the term stat stuff. If you do something long enough, like I think Brett Favre might have the record for most touchdowns, but he also has the record for the most interceptions, which just means he played a long ass time. That's all that means, right? Russ put up good stats. So it doesn't surprise me, but Red's much nicer than I would, because I think he used the word surprising. It would stun me if Russ ever led a team to a title. And that's what greatness is really about, right? I'm pissed off because the next person on his list that he's going to pass with 82 more assists is Isaiah Lord Thomas III. And we all know how I feel about that man, right? So I'm not thrilled that the stat stuffer who's never led anybody anywhere is going to be in front of my guy on the list. That's what I don't like about it. But he's played a long time. I think other than 1 year in OKC, 12 or 13, he pretty much shows up, plays games. And when you do that, like Red said, you will accumulate numbers.
But how old is he? I mean, he's fairly young still, isn't he? I mean, he's got a few years left. I mean, he can continue to pad these steps, and I'm not going to really count the Lakers out. I get a lot of grief, all over the country about the Lakers. I think LeBron is tremendous. When you look at the stats, when LeBron plays, their record is superlative, and when AD and LeBron play, they got a great record. But that's the problem. That's the problem.
I agree with you. But we've said for 2 years, we're not even after dark yet. 2 years, their biggest problem is availability. It's been that way.
Availability.
They put all their guys on the floor. They're a super talented team, but they never have all their guys on the floor. So the West is deep this year, though. I don't like them. They're fifth or sixth best team in the West, in my opinion, on their best day. There's some really good teams in the West.
Boy, I hope they can get that far, because otherwise it looks like play-in. And I'm hoping that the Lakers can avoid play-in. That would be very precarious.
Yeah. I see no way that the Lakers can. The only way they can get in is with a play-in.
Wow.
I don't see any other way. I consulted Stevie last night, and he told me the same thing. So
he couldn't see it.
He couldn't see it either.
Is that what he told you? Was he at the piano writing a song and said, "James, I couldn't see it, bro."
No, I just couldn't see it. So
you gotta stop making Stevie Wonder jokes, man. That ain't right.
My little brother works for him, so I'm allowed. It's okay. So let's talk about Mr. Jokic. Now, we all know that it'll only be probably sometime next week, I guess, when LeBron will pass Kareem for the scoring title. So do you think that regardless of how the records end up, that that feat will prevent Jokic from winning his third straight MVP? You want to take that, Mr. Scott? You're a Laker fan.
Boy, Jokic and these multiple MVPs, and you haven't won titles. I mean, obviously a great player. Obviously a great player. I mean, Steve Nash, great player. MVPs, back-to-back MVP. I mean, LeBron, I mean, what he's doing at his age and the stats and where he's at and breaking the record, he has to get in. I don't know how they look at the playoff stuff, but I mean, LeBron, what can you say about him? But there's other players out there too now. But so many guys, they're not playing. When I watch games, I don't know if Kawhi is going to play the game. I don't know who's going to even be out there on some of these games. There's no real consistency. If I was going to say as a dark horse, what about Tatum? What about Tatum? MVP.
You mean that guy that choked last year up there in Boston? Is that the one you? Yeah. Well, anyway, what's your thoughts on that, Demetrius?
So I agree with everything. Rarely say this. Agree with everything Mr. Scott just said. My real problem is the award, right? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? What is MVP? I hate the award. All right, so we could do this right and say best player. We could say player most important to his team. We could say player playing the best for his age and do this right. But they purposely are leaving this because my feeling is person most valuable to his team, that's Giannis's award until he leaves the league. I mean, that's what I think of Giannis. But Giannis is like my favorite player. But if you look at Jokic's numbers, he's averaging a triple-double right now, 25, 11, and 10. The guy's shooting 63% from the field, and he's got a career high in field goal percentage and assists. So there's a degree of you have to appreciate what Jokic is doing. You have to appreciate that right now his team is winning basketball games, right? His work, what he's doing is helping his team win games.
Reggie?
I got to agree with everything Demetrius just said there. When you're averaging a triple, so if LeBron's numbers statistically were approaching what Jokic's numbers were, then I think that the tiebreaker could be LeBron breaking that record. If there was like LeBron breaks Kareem's record, maybe that's a tiebreaker. But when you look at the stats and see what Jokic is averaging a triple-double currently, and it has his team in contention, it's not like they're not. It's just hard to take the award away from him. If you're going to give this award. If you're going to give this award, it's difficult to take it away from him. If you're going to give it to LeBron for breaking Kareem's record, you're opening up pretty much another award. It's another award you're going to have to open up to accommodate everybody else who's done something like this. Because Jokic, it's impossible for him to do that. It's not a shot. It's not an award everybody in the league would have a shot at. So unless LeBron is right there and you're kind of going how Embiid and Jokic tend to be year after year, if they're like right there, maybe you give the nod to LeBron for breaking that record. But if the stats don't get closer, I don't see how you do it.
The Hall of Fame is LeBron's award for breaking that record. That's why you get into the Hall of Fame first back.
Sure. But boy, you mentioned it, Reg, Embiid. Yeah. I mean, Embiid is dominant. I mean, I've watched several of their games. I mean, and he's so smooth. He does it. He's not just running over people. He's not just stomping over people. I mean, he'll stop and shoot. He'll get the rebound. He plays the defense. I think Embiid, and if with Philly, and obviously I like their coach. I like Doc. One of my roommates in college was his nephew or cousin, one of them, Walt Williams. They all played at Proviso East in Chicago. So I think Embiid has got to be in that mix somehow.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Mr. Scott, I thought you'd be voting for Rudy Gobert.
That's a shot, James.
Well, that's a shot. And that, but you know what? Rudy has been doing what he does. He's He's not. He will give that ball up to somebody to shoot that jumper. If he's under the basket, he does his thing. We're talking double-digit rebounds every day, double-digit scoring. He is what he is, and he's actually, when Towns comes back, we'll see what they can really do in this. The West is tough. I mean, we know that, but teams like Phoenix, I think they're down. Golden State, kind of up and down. When you got Curry, though, I mean, that's a big problem. So, Gobert, it's he needs to be part of a system, and it seems to be coming together. Actually, I was supposed to go tonight to see them with Golden State, but I had a couple of meetings today and wasn't able to go.
There's another award for Rudy Gobert.
I thought you'd be snowed in tonight, Mr. Scott. But
actually, it was very balmy today. Very balmy, 17 degrees. I mean, it felt so warm out when I went out. I couldn't believe it.
Sure.
Yeah, no, but it's good to see that you finally accepted who Rudy Gobert is and realize.
Wait, why are we down on Rudy Gobert? He's one of the best defensive players in the league. Rudy Gobert does things that help teams win basketball games. We're talking about Rudy Gobert.
But he's not worth the price that Minnesota had to pay for him.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. What we gave up.
Okay, all right. Well, let's argue that premise then.
I'm just saying he does something that they have nobody else on that team who can do. There's three dudes in the whole league that can maybe do the thing that Rudy Gobert does. So what you're saying is we have a team. It's built around this. We've got scores. We got this and that. You know what we don't have? We don't have a rim protector. We don't have a guy that changes shots. We don't have a guy to get rebounds. A guy that's up for Defensive Player of the Year every single year. That's what we don't have.
You know, we also don't have 10 first-round draft picks.
Okay, that's great. That's great for the next 10 years. Yeah, okay, but I'm just saying we're talking about Rudy Gobert like he's a bag of Doritos.
I'm talking about him because the guy that lives there was the one that was most upset about the trade when it started.
Well, because the trade seemed like another Herschel Walker.
Yeah,
they gave up everything, and they thought that this centerpiece was going to make it. And we remember when Herschel came, he got the kickoff. He ran out of his shoes. His shoes came off. He was flying down. They thought this was going to be great, but Herschel became what Herschel was, and he ended up, really hurting his franchise with all those draft picks. So the draft picks, I mean, that part I have to agree with JK3, which I don't often do, but I will definitely agree with him there. But I think, if they can keep Towns together, and we don't know. See, some of these players, the chemistry, and it's working now. And when Towns come back, you think it's going to get better. And they need to get in the playoff spot. And I think it's there for them. I think they can do it with Anthony Edwards. I mean, come on. Edwards is really, as a young man like this, what he's doing in the league, I don't think I've seen this since MJ. Type thing.
You gotta like that roster.
Yeah, I was just wondering why Mr. Scott was so down on it. That's why
I said they gave up a ton.
It was a hefty price. They paid a hefty price for that.
They definitely did. I mean, it was one of our questions that week that it happened. So it was, but every once in a while I have to get my little sports digs on, Mr. Scott also. He makes sure, thank God we don't talk about rap music. But anyway.
Please. Spare me, please.
So let's talk about the Hall of Fame and some of the things that I called it way too early. But Scott Rolen joins Fred McGriff on induction day in Cooperstown this coming July. But was Scott Rolen really just the anti-PED winner by default? What's your thoughts? You're a baseball guy. Demetrius, I'm going to let you start this.
Yeah, so I'm going to put on my black socks and become straight I'm about to embrace all 53 of my years right now and yell at every little kid on my grass. Here's the thing. I don't respect this process. this process is flawed. And yes, ultimately, I'm going to get to Lou Whitaker, right? But I don't respect this process. This thing is, I work in a field driven by data. I have no respect for this process. I'm sure there's some fine people in the Baseball Writers Association of America. I'm sure they are. But this thing is about who they like and who they don't like. Scott Rolen, this is no shot at him. But the guy had 2,000-something hits, 316 home runs, and 1,200 plus RBIs, right? That's Hall of Fame now? Okay, so I got to go back to Lou Whitaker now, right? We got to go revisit Lou Whitaker. Lou Whitaker couldn't get 5% of the votes. He had, I think, more hits. I think he's shortened home runs by about 40 of 250-ish home runs and over 1,000 RBI. So his numbers are minimal. They're comparable to Scott Rolen. Lou Whitaker couldn't get 5% of the votes stay on the ballot. At a time where I contend the game was harder. The league had more talent because it wasn't watered down with expansion, right? So I can't support anything around the Baseball Hall of Fame because I just don't respect the process. Obviously, there's some easy ones that you never argue about. But more often than not, you have questions about pretty much everybody they select, and even guys they don't select. Any process that's that flawed makes no sense to me. I can't support. I got nothing against Scott Rolen. And when we get to the next question, I'm going to make my point even more.
Yeah.
Point even more. But right now, it is my inherent distaste for the egos and whims of baseball writers that determine this. We just talk about other guys, and we can go stats. We'll go stats and say this guy deserves to be there because he went to this many Super Bowls. He led the league, and it's easy. Nobody else is like, well, the writers didn't like him. But they will say that with a straight face and not even flinch. Well, he wasn't nice to the writers. I don't give a damn if he was nice to the writers. Lou Whitaker's thing was he didn't like doing interviews. Quiet as it's kept, Lou Whitaker's just a really shy man who didn't like to talk in general. But baseball writers kept him out, won't vote for him despite his numbers. To hell with the baseball writers, man. I don't care about the Hall of Fame. Sorry.
Yeah, if I could chime in just briefly, if Nellie Fox is in, why isn't Lou Whitaker in?
Exactly.
Okay, if Alan Trammell is in, why isn't Lou Whitaker in? I mean, if Gary Sheffield with 500 home runs isn't in, I mean, that's been kind of a standard. 500 home runs is really, how many people with 500 home runs is not in the Hall of Fame? I guess I should do some research on that.
No, you shouldn't. You're right. You don't need to do any research. You don't need to do much research at all. You're right. It's nonsense.
Go ahead, Reg.
I got to echo what they just said. I don't need to jump to the next topic, but I find that these two, I don't understand this question given the second question that we're going to talk about. There's no way. There's no way that Sheffield isn't in if Rolen isn't. And the thing is to piggyback off Demetrius on the process, I do know that Pete Rose was guilty of gambling. I do know it. But when you're using the backdrop of all these guys that get in and you look at his stats, it's getting crazier and crazier to me that some of these guys are getting in. When it comes to the PED situation, there are many guys in there now with PED problems. So if we were really going to start that, we really need to go and do a PED audit of the Hall of Fame and see how many of these guys come out of there. So I don't know. It's rough to think that Sheffield may not and Scott Rolen is. I can't digest that. I'm having a hard time with that.
We're just going to transition, James. We don't need to transition right
but still on this topic is the owner of the Milwaukee that used to be the commissioner, Bud Selig, is he in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Well, he allowed all this stuff to happen. All this stuff happened on his watch.
On his watch, for sure.
On his watch, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I mean, so where do you see the balance and fairness to this? If you can't put Pete Rose in, Pete Rose is the best player one of the best of our generation. I mean,
that's why it's so absurd. Because the idea is, Sheffield wasn't a nice guy. Okay, so what? So let's audit all the baseball writers. You guys got DUIs? You guys ever hit your wives? If that's what we're doing, right? Because it should be about what they did on the field. Yeah. And I grew up obviously rooting for the Detroit Tigers, and Lou Whitaker is a massive part of my childhood growing up as a Detroit Tiger fan. And I am just openly offended. Sheffield is a no-brainer. Sheffield's a joke. He had 2,600 hits, 509 home runs, and over 1,600 RBIs.
Boy, and that wicked swing. Oh,
I have
man.
no issue with Scott Rolen at all. Scott Rolen's probably a nice guy, hell of a baseball player. My issue isn't with Scott Rolen. My issue is with the standard. How in the hell, to Reggie's point, is Scott Rolen in and Gary Sheffield's not? That's worse than Lou Whitaker, and I love Lou Whitaker. That's just worse. And so I can't respect that whole thing. I know it's important to the players, but as a fan, I have no respect for that process.
So, do you think that Sheffield will make it in on his 10th year of eligibility, or do you think we'll be talking about Sheffield being omitted this time next year?
Why would 10 be any different than the first 9? What did Gary Sheffield do in the last year that makes him more deserving? Right? What did he do that makes him more deserving now than he was a year ago? Or hell, 9 years ago. That's why it's absurd. You're pointing out all the absurdity to it. Somehow a guy's not worthy on the 4th or 5th, but on the 9th, okay. You did it. What he didn't do it. He hasn't had a single hit, not a home run, and stolen a base in the last 9 years. So if you didn't put him in for 9 years, why the hell would you put him in now? Other than just to piss me off, which might be what they're all about. I don't know. I feel like it.
Maybe I just come up with too provocative of questions.
Oh, no, I got on my black socks. Dude, I'm ready.
Well, the whole Hall of Fame thing is very, because I have a big beef with the Football Hall of Fame, and I don't want to change, but just a quick. I went to school in Mankato, and Mankato used to be the training camp for the Vikings, and they lived in the dorm with us. I could go throw footballs with them, go to parties with them. I knew Jim Marshall. I used to go to parties at his thing, and Jim Marshall, you look at the longevity, you look at his career, the Iron Man, he played more consecutive games at 225, 230 pounds as a defensive end on one of the most fearsome defensive lines in football history, and he can't get in. And I think there's one reason he can't get in is he ran the wrong way in the game against San Francisco. I think that, but still, you got to look at the body of work. I really think, and I'm trying to do something to get Jim Marshall in the Hall of Fame because I think it's a travesty, just like some of the PEDs guy that they say, and the guy that allowed the PEDs in baseball, he's in. So, yeah.
Reggie, I'm going to start this off with you, and we're going to move on to college football here because 2,729 players entered the portal in December of 2022 compared to, 1,617 in December of 21. Do you think that there should be a limit to the number of players allowed to enter the portal?
I think you should limit the number of players that are allowed to enter the portal when you limit the number of coaches that are allowed to just randomly leave teams. If you can leave, or you're a coach and you can leave a team, you're a player, you can leave a team. I think that it makes things harder, and I think it puts a lot of onus back on some of these coaches, whether it's NIL or transfer portal. It's putting some of the onus back on these coaches to do things to try to keep these players happy. And now you're seeing a little bit of what the NFL has to go through with trying to keep players there. It's not always easy. So if you're a school like my school, Bama, it doesn't matter. We got another 5-star anyway right behind you, so it doesn't matter who really leaves. But I don't think there should be anything limited on these kids. I understand people who might have that opinion and maybe some good reasons for it, but I don't believe that there should be.
You hit on an interesting point there about, if coaches can leave, why can't players leave? Some arguments that we've had for quite a few years now. What do you think about that, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, the players having more control in movement. I guess I have to lean toward that. Players having some control. I mean, historically, that hasn't been something they've had the ability to do. It's the colleges are making big bucks, and I think the players all now they get some funds. I think they can sell their image or sell jerseys or get some type of incremental type income from football. So I think they probably have the right to do what they think is in their best interest. And I think, here you're a running back, you've been there, maybe you've had an injury, and they bring in a 4-star recruit for your position. Maybe you see the handwriting on a wall, and it gives them more flexibility. I lean toward the players being able to make those type of decisions along with their family to see what seems to be in their best interests. So I lean toward the portal and players being able to determine their fate, having a little bit more control over that.
What do you think, Demetrius? Does it give schools like Indiana, and your alumni, to be able to pick up some of these players that maybe ordinarily they wouldn't? And do you think that there should be a limit to the number of players in the portal or not?
Yeah, so Reggie covered the limit question. I don't need to do that. It couldn't have been said better, right? I bleed green and white. So my first thought is, how does this affect Michigan State University? Right? Hell yeah, I love it. I love the hell out of it, right? To me, transfer portal is an extension of recruiting. Reggie's school doesn't care. They don't care. Because like you said, they got another 5-star right in the chamber.
Yeah.
And if you can recruit, you can handle the portal, right? But stuff like oversigning, which Reggie's school and many others have done for years because it's not against the rules.
Yes.
So they'll keep, right?
We'll keep signing them.
Right, keep signing them. This is where Michigan State and Mel Tucker's like, okay, that kid that was a 5-star last year who thought he would be playing as a sophomore at Alabama, only to see 3 more 5-stars come in this year, and now he's got to fight for a job, looks online and says, wait, I can go to East Lansing and start tomorrow. I can see Kenneth Walker, right? It's not that hard. It's now players have the right to look at opportunities. Mr. Scott said, them and their families, sit down. What's best for the kids, right? So my second thing, right after what's best for Michigan State, what's best, I don't give a damn about the coaches. I don't care about the NCAA. I don't care about the TV. Best for Michigan State, best for the kids, full stop. And I love it. And it's better for the fans. We get to talk about trend. We get to watch it like it's a second level of recruiting. And the reality is the good coaches can recruit. That's why they build their programs. Those same dudes will have no problem handling transfer portal, whether it's going to get a kid or letting some kid go. They're just not even the janky school down the street that I don't ever talk about. They are who they are, and I know who they are, and that's cool. They're not going to struggle with this. They got that stupid Block M and people like that. They're going to be fine. This is great for my school. we are on a different tier, and we can go get a Kenneth Walker and go 11-2, change our whole landscape, right? So yeah, I'm all about the kids. And Reggie's first statement really covered it at a high level. But when you talk about Michigan State, because coaches will drop in a heartbeat and go somewhere else, take more money. See Jimbo or go down the line, right? They're going to take the money. And they're going to tell you it's best for them and their family. Same thing with the kids. I have no problem. Even kids that leave Michigan State. If you got a better opportunity somewhere else, knock yourself out. I ain't mad at you. Yeah, I love it. I love the transfer portal. and by the way, it's the new normal. So get used to it. There ain't no sense of bitching about it. It's like me or Mr. Scott being mad that it's snowing. Yeah, okay. We know where we live. Dang it, it's snowing in January. That's not we know where we live.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I was in Pittsburgh. But if it snows here, like I said, my damn cable better be off. But so, Mr. Scott, I'm gonna let you start this off. How's the University of Minnesota schedule looking this year, and what do you think your record will be at the end of next season?
Well, I haven't really looked ahead too far with that. Because I'm really so kind of down on the Big Ten because all these divisions and all these other schools coming in. I mean, the Marylands, the Rutgers, and I think they even have some California things coming in. And then the Gophers don't even play Ohio State. I mean, I can't remember the last time they played them. So how can we say that how good they really are? It's almost like this is, it's kind of put together. And I like the old Big Ten. I mean, if you're going to have a conference, have a conference. No, it's no Big Ten. It's big, what is it, Big 16 by now? I mean, or to that point. So what? And then there's divisions where you don't play everybody. You don't. So it's really hard to say. It's really all about the dollar now. It's really all about. It's a Big Ten. I think the Gophers, they gave their coach some money. He seems to be great at recruiting. They had a quarterback. I think he was almost a 10-year quarterback with all the injuries. I can't remember. I think this guy's been at least 6 or 7 years. He's finally out. They have one young guy, and that's one thing they really haven't brought up, quarterbacks. But I mean, I think they'll be right in the thick of whatever they're doing. If they're playing Rutgers, if they're playing Maryland, if they're playing Illinois, if they're maybe Iowa, they always play Wisconsin.
Don't do it.
And then they'll have 3 or 4 cupcakes at the beginning. So they're going to have a decent record and get one of these obscure bowl games. And I think that's just like they did this year. They went to Yankee Stadium and played Syracuse. I watched some of it, but so no, the Big Ten has been really. I like when you had to go through Ohio State, you had to go through Michigan State when they're at their primes. Now Nebraska comes in, and Nebraska used to be a power, but this is not the Nebraska that I remember, that I grew up with. So Big Ten as a division, college basketball in general, to me, it's they've gone for the dollar. They stretched everything out. It's been thinned out. I mean, look at the national championship game. I mean, what did he get beat by? With the first game, the team gets beat by 60 points. I mean, what in the world is that? Why didn't that other team play in the championship game? So championship game. So I'm down on it for the most part. I do follow the Big Ten still, but other than that, I'm kind of down on it.
But just call him the big dollar, Mr. Scott.
Yeah.
Demetrius, what about your schedule?
So all this is the responsibility of Reggie's conference. I'm blaming all this on Reggie. Right, this is all Reggie. Because everything Mr. Scott said is true. And even though my socks are black and I want to agree with them, we had no choice. Reggie's conference made it impossible to compete at any level. Because what you said, we got smoked. When my team went to the CFP in 2015, it was 31-0 at the end of the first quarter, maybe. I was on a cruise ship, all excited, and it was Alabama 31, Michigan State nothing before I blinked. I just went and changed my clothes and went to a New Year's Eve party. I didn't even watch the rest of the game. We're not in their league. They do business differently than we do. And we had to bring in USC and UCLA. Dollars, TV market, money, all those reasons. So to your question, I agree with Mr. Scott, but we didn't have a choice. I'm just accepting it because the SEC made it impossible. And once they got Texas and Oklahoma, who they grab?
Yeah, Texas and Oklahoma.
When they did, now they're just going to go into Florida. Eventually, Clemson's going to say, okay, and they're going to be unbeatable. So we need to get Oregon, Stanford, a couple others, because we got to compete. So soon it's only going to be 2 conferences at the top.
That's the way it's going.
It's going to be 2 conferences and then a couple others at the bottom. Second tier deal. We'll let 2 of their teams in, and the other 10 teams will be big dollar sign and SEC. So, because that's our
we have a school here in Minnesota called St. Thomas University. Okay, it's been a D3 school. Now they play D1 football. Okay, it's a campus right in the inner city of St. Paul. Their stadium has 10,000. I mean, 2 of my nephews played there. They played high school at a place called Cretin, where Paul Molitor went to Cretin, Joe Mauer went to Cretin, and then the coach went over to St. Thomas, and now they're D1 basketball, D1 football, and they have a 10,000 seat stadium. I mean,
it's all driven by money.
They play as Appalachian State or Valdosta or so there are some bottom D1 teams that I had never thought about.
Yep.
And they're D1.
Yeah, and that's where it's going. Yeah, it was all driven by the NCAA is the worst organization ever, like structurally and management-wise. And I'll be quick on our schedule. Our schedule is easy. We got 4 home games to start. We need to come out of there 3-1. University of Washington coming to finish a home and home. We lost to them in Seattle last year. We need to come out of there 3-1. And then we got some losses. It's going to be tough to go to Iowa. I like PJ Fleck a ton. It's going to be tough when we go to Minnesota. I don't know if we're going to win that game. The Jackasses down the road come to our stadium. I don't know if we're good enough to beat them, but we're certainly going to give them a game. And then we got to go to Ohio State. We're at best, we're 7-14. But we had a really good transfer portal, and it's really next year's recruiting class, particularly in our defensive front, that's going to make us viable. We need one more year. I think we're about 7-4 this year because we got some games at home, but we can't win in Ohio State. I don't know that we can win in Minnesota, and I'm not sure we can beat the Jackasses down the road no matter where the game's played. So I see 7-4 because I think we have a young quarterback. Remember the name Kaden Hauser. Just first time you guys have heard it, you will hear it again. Kid's going to be spectacular. It just depends on how quickly he's growing. He could be a difference maker. 2 good transfer portal running backs. So we'll be fun to watch. We'll be better than we were this past year. And we're a year away. We're a year away. Like the Lions. I said a year ago, the Lions, a year away. Next year, all roads come through Allen Park, Michigan. Separate note. Sorry, Mr. Scott. I had to detract a little bit. Michigan State's still a year away. 7-4 is my call.
Reggie,
do we got to do the Alabama part of this?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll make this very quick because I'm probably going to run here in about half an hour anyway. So let me just go ahead and make this pretty fast. Just another day at the office, fellas. That's what it is. Just another day.
Another day here. So because
11-1. So Kirby Smart, LSU.
It's a tough schedule from what has been said before. The SEC is getting tougher. It's getting tougher and tougher, and eventually we're going to go to an NFL. I think that we're going to have an NFL type situation here one day where you just got 2 conferences and they're competing against each other. For the most part, they expand the playoffs. If they expand the playoffs, I'm pretty sure we're in last year. The thing is with Bama is the schedule gets harder. But if we have 2 wins, people call us bums. We're like, they want to get us out of here. Like you 2 losses, they're like, what are you doing? Like you guys should have won every game. Like and it's getting harder and harder to do that. With transfer portal,
Reggie,
NIL,
you got 125 guys. I mean, every
But the 2 losses were by a grand total of 5 points.
Right. One was at LSU with a 2-point conversion. Where now we're bums. They don't want us in there no more. That's it. That's all it took.
Yeah.
Is Kirby Smart going to beat you guys again this year? Or are you going to take the SEC?
It's a possibility. I'm not writing off. I don't write off any of these teams in SEC because as they're getting just closer and closer and closer. Yep. It's like we were talking about with the transfer portal. Guys are tired. We may have 3 5-star guys, but that's the reason somebody might leave is for that exact same reason. So it's hard to just depend on that and rest on those laurels in this kind of environment that we're in. So I see things getting tougher for Bama down the road with all the changes that's happened to college football.
Okay. Let's see. I don't have Bill here today to run off all the stats, man. It's usually we can depend upon Bill to tell us where the guy went to school, what college his mother went to. Yeah. So Hendon Hooker says that the NFL is in line to see a better him. Do you think that Hendon will be a quarterback in the NFL next season, Reggie?
Brock Purdy was this season. So, yes, absolutely. I can see it happening because it at the end of the day, it's next man up depending on what situation he falls into. He might be thrusted into the position and forced to play depending on where he lands. As far as skill set and all that, I don't know. The quarterback class this year does seem kind of top heavy, but you never know where that guy is going to come from. You just never know who it's going to be. And Hendon Hooker, can he be that guy? Yeah, for sure. I'm not going to write him off and say that he won't be a guy at the next level. I just don't know where that is right now. It's just so early in the game. I got to see what situation he goes to. Does he go to a situation where he's sitting behind a veteran? Does he go to a situation where he goes he's sitting behind a quarterback that's injury prone? I don't know. I think those things can work out for him, but I'm not necessarily ready to put the yellow jacket on him either. Like I don't know where he's going to be at.
What about you, Demetrius?
So I think I agree. I think the measurables are there, right? This kid's 6'4". He's got a strong arm. He threw like 60 touchdowns and only 5 picks in 2 seasons. So there's a lot there to like. but you tore your ACL. So now you've changed the entire process for you, right? And most experts have him, I don't know, fifth. It's like Bryce, Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, depending on how much you like Richardson, right? So I think that Reg brought up a good point. There's two kinds of scenarios that I think are perfect fits for him. A team with an injury-prone quarterback that they're not sure of, or a team like my very own Detroit Lions, who have a solid quarterback for the next 2 years. We got a bunch of draft picks, so we can use our second round pick at 59 and draft a developmental quarterback. That's actually a smart thing to do, right? If this kid slides down to 59 and you have him with a proper ACL, you have him rated 30, that's called a value pick. You pick him, you sit him down. Jared Goff's your quarterback for the next 2 years anyway, because he's got a great contract and he's balling out. You don't have to do anything with Hendon Hooker. So you draft him at 59, your financial commitment is not that high. If it turns out he works, you're a genius. If it doesn't kill you. Or Miami, the other situation Red's talking about, right? You got a quarterback can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
Like his talent, can't stay on the field. Do you draft a Hendon Hooker and he's your heir apparent? There's always a Tua rumor. I'm not even sure what the fascination is, but there's always somebody wanting to trade for Tua. So I think both of those situations that Reg mentioned are ideal. Not ideal. Ideal, his ACL is fine. He goes in the top 20. Because I think his talent, well, I won't say his talent, his frame, his potential screams top 20, take your shot kind of guy. The torn ACL just drops him down X number of spots because that's just the way it is. And I think he falls into one of those developmental situations Reg talked about. Miami at 52 makes sense. My Lions at 59 makes sense. If we get the right defensive players we want in free agency, we have enough capital, 2 1s, 2 2s, and a 3. We can spend the 59th pick on a Hendon Hooker and let him come on his own time.
Mr. Scott, is Minnesota thinking about trading up?
Yeah,
maybe not Hooker, but somebody.
He's got a fall team.
It might not be Hooker, but somebody. Kirk Cousins is still going to be that guy, Mr. Scott?
They're kind of stuck with the statuesque Kirk Cousins, for another year or two. I mean, but they really need to look to the future now. I mean, when you look at how Mr. Irrelevant did, I mean, Mr. Irrelevant came in and he had played 3-4 years in college. He good program. I mean, let's bring somebody else in. I mean, we've seen what the Cousins game can do. I mean, the Cousins thing has really reached its apex a while ago. So I'd love to see him move up and actually get a quarterback. Now they need some offensive line help. They're talking about now they're really down on Dalvin Cook for some reason. I don't know why. They just say he goes down too easy. He only can just break a run every now and then, and he's not really eating up the yards that they'd like to see. No, he's not Derrick Henry. He's never been Derrick Henry. And I think the kind of speed backs, maybe they do have a shelf life. I don't know. So there's going to be a little bit of a turnover. And I know Bill, I wish he was here because he really loves our GM with the analytics and thinks the numbers is going to win the game, a numbers game. You can just move them like chess pieces. But and I have to agree with Demetrius. I think Detroit is going to be someone to deal with, especially now with Green Bay and just kind of switching for a moment to quarterbacks in the NFC with Green Bay and Rodgers. Who knows? I mean, who knows what this guy's going to do?
We're going to talk about him in a little
bit.
So.
But no, I think the Vikings should really be looking at one of these good quarterbacks.
So moving on to the NFL, Mr. Scott, Tom came out this morning and said he's done. Of course, he said.
Well, he said that before. He said
that last year. He did say that last year.
On this day.
He said that before.
Yes. Yeah.
He said that before.
There's a couple of things that have changed. Like he's put his kids in school in Miami. So it's kind of and we talked about the Tua situation, but they've spoken on that. I thought that there was a possibility he might end up in San Francisco since he's from there, and we don't really know the quarterback situation there. But he said that he's in retirement. What do you think about that announcement, Mr. Scott? And do you think that he'll retire as a Patriot?
Yeah, well, that's a good question there. Retirement as a Patriot. I mean, I think Tom has been past his use by date for the last couple of years. I mean, I think you just can't play this string out. And I think there could be some acrimony between him and Belichick. When you look at the Deflategate and all that, I mean, they blame Tom. Tom was like, "Hey, I don't know anything about football. I don't have anything to do with that." And so he got blamed for that. He had to sit out a few games. He got dinged on it. And I think that he left New England with some acrimony. And so I would, if I was betting, I'd say he'd go in as New England. I mean, that's where he had the most success. That's generally what happens. But I do think that there's some acrimony between him and Belichick.
Yeah, but it's Mr. Kraft that signs the checks, and it's Mr. Kraft that told Belichick, if you don't get Jimmy Garoppolo out of here, your ass is going. So, yeah.
So that's. I think, I'm glad I think he made the right decision. I think he's been past his use by date. His style of play now is just not in vogue. This stand-up court, just like Cousins. Their style of play now, you've got to have more mobility. They're looking at the Mahomes, the Hurts, the people that have some movement.
Mr. Scott, Scott, do you have a bar soap in your house?
No.
I still use bar soap. Yeah, why?
Putting Tom Brady and Kirk Cousins in the same sentence, you need to go wash your mouth out with soap.
Well, not from winning. I'm just talking about style of play. I'm talking about stand-up quarterbacks, pocket quarterbacks. That's all I was saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. But no, I agree. Yeah, no, they're not in the same. Trust me, I know that they're not in the same.
Greetings, Don. The power is restored.
It is.
Yeah. You guys gonna be okay down there? I guess it's in the 30s. You guys all right?
Yeah. So we've had an ice storm last 2 days. Just little coating of ice everywhere, and a tree branch fell on one of the power lines down the street, and we're without power for a while, but it's back on. Hopefully, it doesn't go back off. So,
you're my guy, but I live north of Chicago, so I don't really care. It's 20 degrees.
Oh yeah,
30s. I'm rejoicing for 30s. I'm rejoicing.
They're everywhere, right? Exactly.
Hey,
I'm glad you're good. I'm just kidding.
30 degrees, little ice. I haven't been to school in 2 days.
Oh,
oh man, what
must be nice.
Yeah, it really must be nice. Consider, hey, what happened to walking uphill both ways in the snow?
Right.
And then, so Don, what did you think about the Tom Brady's announcement this morning? And do you think that he'll retire as a Patriot?
I think it'd be a good move if he did, because let's just face it, that's where his glory days were. But that would be up to, I guess, Kraft. I think Kraft would welcome that. I think it's just up to Brady, if he wants to do that, go that route, or what they used to do, sign him for 1 day, like they did.
Yeah, sign a 1 day contract. Yeah.
But apparently he's going to be at Fox doing NFL football on Sunday, so that'll be kind of cool to watch.
Yeah. Well, he said he wasn't going to do the Super Bowl though, so it'll definitely be starting next season. Reggie, what's your thoughts on the retirement of Brady?
I think that he should go in as a New England Patriot. You 23 years, you spent 3 of these in Tampa Bay. He spent 20 of them. If you don't, then of course we're going to know that some of the stuff that's been said is probably true. Some of the stuff that's been said under that about what the relationships will probably be substantiated by a guy who goes in with a team he's been with for like a few hours in comparison to the team that he was with before. When it comes to his numbers and stuff, I have a show called Just the Stats. I do like the stats. And this is a situation where you have a big difference between what the eye test, what you see with your eyes, and what the stats say. Because when you look at Tom Brady's stats, he had more yards this year than about 6 or 7 of his other years that he's played. And those were a decade ago. He played these games. He had more yards than he had in 2013 this year. So it's kind of like, I do feel like that'll be decent for a few teams. 2021, he had 5,000 yards, 43 touchdowns. It's 2021. A lot of teams could use that type of production, but I think at the end of the day, what my eyeballs are telling me, man, is it's time. It's time. It's time for him to hang it up. And if I was him, I would go in as a New England Patriot, but I don't know what that relationship may be with Mr. Kraft and Belichick and stuff like that.
Go ahead, Demetrius. You got the last word because you started talking about that relationship between him and Belichick, but I do think that the relationship between him and Kraft merits it all. I mean, at one time he was like the son to Kraft.
Yeah. I don't know if I care that much about the going in as a Patriot. I don't think I even get that. I think Reggie just laid it out. If you catch somebody 5, 10 years, 30 years from now and say, what team Tom Brady for, none of them are going to say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's just not. It just doesn't make any sense, right? So I guess that's cute and it matters to somebody. Just not me. I just think that Mr. Scott covered it really well very early. He was nicer than I am because we're after dark and I'm tired and I don't give a crap. He said his use by date. I think I'm going to quote a couple of poets tonight before we're done. I'm going to start with the great
might as well start with this.
Mr. Scott's even bouncing. I saw him bouncing. I saw him bouncing.
Did you see him? So
the first one is the great philosopher called LeVar Ball. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He once said, and I'm using this reference to Father Time, because that's what Mr. Scott was talking. Never lost. Father Time. And then Reggie said the same thing again, which is, you see it. We see it. We watch Tom Brady play football. And the stats are the stats. There's an extra game. He probably threw more passes than anyone. Why? Because they didn't have a running game. There's viable explanations to why he padded the stats. But I know that Father Time is undefeated. Never lost. And that's all we're seeing. Father Time said, okay, son, I'm going to need you to come on home. It's time. And I don't care about his relationship with Kraft. That's all fluffy crap. I got to be honest with you guys. Last year, when to all the main eyes, it looked like he chose football over his family, I wiped my hands with him like a blackjack dealer. I'm done. When your wife said, hey, I'm going to divorce you if you don't retire, and you come back and play football anyway, that's a next level. That wife, by the way, not just any old regular wife.
The one that makes more than you do.
The one that has allowed the Patriots to disregard the salary cap and underpay you and win Super Bowls, and you're going to disrespect her like that? I'm sorry. I don't really care what team he retires with. It was time. It's hard to keep your body at that kind of condition at 45, drinking all the avocado shakes you want. Doesn't matter. Father Time's undefeated. And I think that's all we saw. Father Time is in the center of the ring right now. Both hands up.
So, Demetrius, what's next for the Bucks? Considering that Tom has a dead cap hit of what is it, $30 million next year?
$30 million. So the next poet I'm going to quote tonight is Clubber Lang. That is from Rocky, and I believe he looked at Rocky Balboa and said, "Pain." That's what's in store for Tampa. Pain. They got other cap issues, and they got an old roster. And by the way, there's teams coming up, not blowing smoke on Reggie. That team is going to make a couple moves and probably come up in that division. That division is about to get a lot better. Specifically, New Orleans is going to get over their cap issues at some point. Atlanta is closer than people think. Atlanta is a lot closer than people think. So I think they're about to hit the down portion of a 4, 5, 6 year stretch because they've got it. That dead cap money is no joke. $30 million of dead cap money. That's 4 good players. That's 2 very good players. That's 1 superstar. That's a powerful hit, right? So, yeah, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt.
What do you think, Mr. Scott? $30 million cap hit on the Bucks. They can split it up over 2 years if they want, but even $15 million. What do you think with the way that roster is right now, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, they who's going to play quarterback? I mean, I think that's their big thing. Do they have a backup? I don't even know that they do have one. So they've got to use that to start over. They're going to be starting over. It's just going to be a new day for them.
Don?
There's a lot of candidates out there. We talked last week that maybe Russell Wilson might be looking for a new home. Garoppolo might be looking for a new home. Carr might be looking for a new home. So there's
Well, Carr got the trailer loaded up. He's definitely moving.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, there's options out there for Tampa Bay. It'll be interesting if they go for a vet or if they try to draft someone in the draft coming up.
What do you think, Reggie? Now that Don mentioned it, Derek Carr, in a Bucs uniform, maybe. What's your thoughts on this big cap hit that Tampa Bay is going to have to take despite Brady retiring?
I think that Todd Bowles hopes Derek Carr comes down there because it's blow up time, man. It's blow up time. It's over with. Like until I don't see how when you lose your court. The only reason you were in the Super Bowl is because of Tom Brady. Let's just keep it funky. Like if it wasn't for no Tom Brady, you would not have been in the Super Bowl. So that guy is walking out of there. Now you're left with the same pieces that you had before he got there, unless in a more hurt condition and older. So I don't understand how you can look at that as a plus here. And this is before we even get to the cap hit. This is just the reality of the situation before we even get to the money and the contracts. I don't see what the Bucs are going to do. Barring a miracle, maybe they get a quarterback like a Carr, throws them a life preserver, but I don't see how you throw Derek Carr in there and all of a sudden now that changes fortunes for this team. If Lenny can't stay on the field, Chris Godwin, you got to hold your breath when he goes down. You never know. It might go down for a few games or so. So I don't know. I mean, I've always liked the players there, despite them being in my division. I've liked the skill players they have there. But I just don't know. When it seems like Tom is walking out, shutting the door, and turning the lights off when he gets out of there, personally.
Reggie, I don't know how much more time you have left, so I'm going to
stick around for another half hour here. So.
Okay, so Aaron Rodgers allegedly is weighing if football fits into his future. Reggie, is he just playing chess with the Packers front office while they're still playing checkers with him?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to start calling him Aaron Favre here at this point because he's doing the exact same thing Brett did down the stretch of his career. Even with the talk of him going to the Jets, like it's almost. I don't understand that. I don't understand these conversations. If he decides to leave, I don't know what they're going to do because they're not a high free agent destination there. That's what kind of sucks about some of those small market teams is when certain guys leave, they're just not easy. Money's just not going to be what replaces them because a lot of the top guys, anybody will pay them the money. So it gets harder to try to replace that. I can't even say I know if Jordan loves a guy, but I do know that he's going to be considerable hit or considerable difference between him and Aaron Rodgers if they decide to kind of try to suit Jordan Love up out there. And I think Aaron Rodgers walks out of there, they can do what I feel the Bucs should do. Just go straight into rebuild status. I just don't know how you're going to do that outside of the draft. Free agency, the Packers don't tend to be a great free agent destination for teams. And I think that because of that, Aaron's holding all the cards here. If he's playing in another city, they might be able to tell him to beat it. But the Packers just got to hope he stays. I don't know what else they're going to do.
Isn't he due $160 million this year?
Yeah, he's got a lot of money coming.
Yeah. Don, what's your thoughts on Aaron?
Well, Tampa Bay's looking for a quarterback.
but Tampa Bay can't afford that hit.
Well, never say never.
No, okay, all right.
I mean, you can. That's why I have lawyers and contract renegotiations, that type of stuff. But now, Aaron Rodgers will play somewhere next year. I don't think it'll be Green Bay. I think he's probably worn out his welcome. But there's you have to have whoever's coaching at Green Bay has to have a degree in psychology as well to handle his psyche. So, but yeah, there's plenty of teams that will need a quarterback, and I just don't see him in Green Bay. I just don't see it.
What's your thoughts, Mr. Scott?
Well, this whole if you don't win, you get rid of your quarterback. I mean, what's wrong with Derek Carr? I mean, what? So
we're
that's
going to talk about him next.
Up.
So yeah, we're going to talk about him next.
Looks like it's blown up, but as far as Rodgers, yeah, I'd agree. Looks like he's worn out his welcome there, but he's still one of the top quarterbacks. I mean, so I don't know. Jordan Love, I guess that's if they want to go and change at this point. But I just don't know how these people get so disgruntled with these good quarterbacks and they have to keep moving. Of course, I'd like to move from Kirk Cousins, but that's a whole other thing. For another conversation. But yeah, I don't know. Rodgers he's gotten into be kind of a head case right now. And it looks like he's toying with them. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? He'll have options. I mean, there's no question about that. As Don said, there's options out there for these people. So, and if you're close and you can get a Rodgers, well, it looks good. But this whole mentality is if we don't win, we've got to get rid of people. We've got to change instead of saying, let's regroup and do this again. Guess that's the way it's going now.
Demetrius, I know you're tired of talking about Aaron Rodgers, so I'm going to let you handle this Derek Carr situation here. How hard is it going to be to replace Derek Carr? They do have weapons. I mean, they got Waller. They got, well, we don't know the situation about Renfro, but the young kid that's replacing him has stepped up. And then, of course, you got all that speed on the outside. So, I mean, what do you think? Is it going to be hard for the Raiders to replace Carr?
First, thanks for not making me talk about that corduroy suit because I did not want any part of that.
Even though you opened with it, right? Never mind. That's all right.
No, I mean, he wore a corduroy suit to the ESPYs. We're going to act like that didn't happen. What are we talking about? Okay, so the question of can they replace him is a good one. But again, as much as this is a lot of times I'm agreeing with Mr. Scott in one night, and I haven't seen him much. Why are you replacing Derek Carr is my bigger question, because I don't see this long list of dudes that are significantly better than Derek Carr. Don't even factor the relationship with Devon. I think Derek Carr is a good quarterback. And when I look at the list, who's out there that you're getting that's better, right? And then you got to maneuver all this stuff with, okay, you got the 7th pick in the draft. Okay, is Will Levis today better than Derek Carr? Is Anthony Richardson today better than Derek? Now, will they be down the line? So maybe you're playing the long game. I don't know. Who is it? Who? I don't know who the guy. You're going to go get Matt Ryan? Nope. You're going to get the corduroy suit wearing jackass to come to the Raiders? Okay. But then in 2 years when he's 40 and you're still paying him $50 million on your salary, what do you do then? You don't have the cap space. You might not have the draft capital to make the trade to get the corduroy suit jackass. So who are you getting that's better? And if you're not going to get better than Derek Carr, what the hell are you doing? Sorry, I hijacked the question, but blame Mr. Scott. He planted the seed. If you're not getting better than Derek Carr, why are you letting Derek Carr go? So the question is, who's better? Could they call Minnesota and get Kirk Cousins? If I'm Minnesota, I'll take the call. Please do. I take the call, right? I'm going to ask for a lot. I don't know. Derek Carr is going to find a landing spot. There are teams that need quarterbacks, right? But if you guys can tell me if I'm missing something, I like this game. I study a lot. Name me that list of quarterbacks that we know that are available, that won't kill you from a compensation standpoint, that won't cripple your cap, that are better than Derek Carr. When you go through that process, I don't know what that list is. Is it Jimmy Garoppolo? No, Jimmy Garoppolo can't stay on the field. We might be more talented, but if you're not playing, Derek Carr shows up every week. Is it Dak Prescott? Oh, wait. Sorry, Don. I was just kidding. Yeah. Who are these? All these guys out here where you just kick Derek Carr to the curb with no. Oh, like it was easy. Okay, we'll get somebody better. Good luck with that. Good luck. Jared Goff's not available.
Reggie, your thoughts on Derek Carr?
Can't say it any better than that. What are you? I don't know what the Raiders are thinking here. I'm not sure. You good luck finding another 35,000 yard passer to come through there. Good luck finding another guy who doesn't really miss games, passes for about 4,000 yards a year. Good luck finding that just on the open market because for one, it's not available. They better hope Minnesota wants to get rid of Kirk Cousins because that would be a godsend for them only because you're going to at least be changing 4,000 to 5,000 yards for another 4,000 to 5,000 yards because those yards aren't easy to come by in this league. So I'm not sure what they are hoping for. I have no clue because Tom is sitting out, if Tom actually stays out, and if Aaron Rodgers doesn't leave Green Bay, Derek Carr is going to be the hottest quarterback on the market next year. And then what are the Raiders now in the run for the guy they just sent out there? Like it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what the Raiders are doing. Yeah, that's all I have on that. I'm not as low on Derek Carr as everybody else. I don't know when we woke up and decided Derek Carr was a complete bum. He's not. So I'm not sure exactly what the Raiders are thinking here.
Mr. Scott, what's your thought?
Well, it's like I said, Carr, I think he's been good for the franchise. I think that I would roll with him. I don't know what their alternatives are. But like you said, he's got the truck backed up and he's gone. Don't know where he's going, but he does have options. And who do they replace him with? So I guess they've just geared to starting over in Vegas, which again, that's one I don't understand.
Wouldn't it be something if he ended up as a 49er and in the Super Bowl next year?
You know what? If he goes to the 49ers, they just might.
Don, what's your thoughts, Don? They are without a quarterback, So Jimmy G's supposedly gone. The two young guys, Trey Lance, he's had surgery. Of course, Brock's had surgery. So, what's your thoughts there, Don?
Well, I've always been a Carr fan, so I'll just get that out of the way. I don't know. Like I said, the way the NFL is structured right now, all these people looking for homes. Look at San Francisco. You're down to your third string quarterback, and third string quarterback Brock Purdy is probably better than the two that were starting ahead of him. So, you could make the assumption that one of those quarterbacks is going to be gone, I'm sure. I think Shanahan and the front office will go all in on Purdy. So, Jimmy G could be probably one of several places next year. And it could be Las Vegas. It could be Tampa Bay. It could be, maybe Denver. I don't know. That's why I like the offseason to find out how all this is going to work out. Drafts in in April, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So usually everything will be solidified around May, middle of May. We should know something.
Don, the Chargers hired Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. So should we credit the Chargers for the hire? Or should we credit the Cowboys for letting him go?
San Diego is going to be
San Diego.
No,
Los Angeles. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting they're moving around, but yeah. So
next thing you'll be calling the Clippers, San Diego Clippers, right? No.
But yeah, I think the Cowboys got rid of him, and it's funny because he's like I'd say like a B-list offensive coordinator. If you're talking about A-list celebrities, B-list celebrities, he's like a B-list offensive coordinator. he's a good scapegoat for what went wrong with the Cowboys this year, but he's not the guy that should have been blamed for everything. I mean, he's had his ups and downs, but there's a lot worse things going on with the Cowboys than having Kellen Moore. But I think Kellen Moore he's not very innovative as far as offenses go. So Chargers, I could be wrong. He could probably go to the Chargers and light them up and go to the playoffs, but I don't see it happening.
Reggie, what did you think about the former star linebacker for the Texans, D'Amico Ryan, becoming the Texans head coach?
I think it's a good look because of so normally you mentioned the Texans and it's just complete dumpster fire as of late. Like, I'm not sure what is going on with the Texans. So my first thoughts was, why would any human being want this job? But one of the things you do got to think about, there are only 32 of these in the world available. So there is always going to be somebody who wants the job, even when it looks like an absolute disaster outside looking in. What saved this job for me, in my opinion, is just the draft pick situation. The draft capital saved this job for D'Amico, because you got to get the quarterback right. You hire these coaches, and when you look at some of the Hall of Fame coaches throughout their careers, it's very hard to separate them from Hall of Fame quarterbacks throughout their career. So there's no, unless they're going to get maybe Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or somebody that I'm not sure who they're going to be looking for, but at least he has a chance to, and that's something better than a lot of coaches. Some coaches got to take over complete dumpster fire, and you're still coaching with the other coaches' mistakes, so to speak. You still have all of their draft picks, all of their free agents that they picked up. So he'll have an opportunity. So I think it's a good opportunity for him, especially being that he played for them, got drafted by them. So I think all of that kind of fits well in an otherwise crazy situation, because the Texans, they've seemingly found a way to do everything wrong the last few years.
What did you think about the hiring Demetrius?
I think it's good on a lot of levels. I think that one of the things Reggie said that's really good, I had not thought of it. It's like, if you look at Hall of Fame coaches, go back and look at their quarterbacks. That's like a really good point. I started running off coaches in my head, and I was like, damn, he's right. I can attach a quarterback to whether it's Landry and Staubach or, way back then, right? Bradshaw and your guy in Pittsburgh. But to answer your question, I think he's earned this job. Nobody's going to come back and say, oh, this guy hasn't paid his dues. He absolutely has. You add on the fact that he once played for that team. That's a really good player. That made it a almost no-brainer. They're really good about hiring black coaches. They're also really good about firing black coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Hiring and firing.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to give them credit, for that at least. But I think the biggest point was the quarterback. I think he's in a position to get his quarterback right now. His quarterback he thinks fits him, right? And he'll have choices. If he wants to get creative, he can probably move back to 4, let Indy come up to 2, pick up some picks, and still get Will Levis if you like him, Anthony Richardson if you love him. So he's got the quarterback problem, and that's the biggest thing. You can have a great team. If you don't have the quarterback, you're only going so far. If you have the quarterback, you still got to put other pieces around him. So there's work to do. He got a 6-year deal, so it's not like they expect him to fix it overnight, right? He's going to have time. So I like to hire because I think the guy earned it. Always good to go back to your team, and I think he's in a position to be successful because of that number 2 pick.
Don, what are they saying down there in Texas?
Well, I think it's an optimistic hire. This is his. I mean, he knows the game. He knows what it takes to be successful. I just don't know if the Texans have the roster to make a move. I think they need to build up their roster full of playmakers, which they don't really have. They need to shore up that defense. So as long as the front office is patient, I think he'll do all right. But you should give your coach 4 years at least to build his program and get his players in there, and let him make some choices on the draft. Work with the general manager. So the Texans are like the shit show of Texas. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so, hopefully, by hiring him, they'll inject some enthusiasm into the franchise. But I'm not going to expect anything, next year at all. That could change with the draft, but we'll see.
What did you think, Mr. Scott, about the hire D'Amico Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. I mean, hiring Lovey, I mean, that wasn't even a real hire. I mean, they didn't really hire Lovey, and it was so funny that at the end of the season, he started to win a few games. And I mean, the team actually started to show a little life, but, without a quarterback and without a lot of talent behind it. And then Lovey getting fired. I mean, it was almost like they just hired him to just kind of get through the season. And so they just really didn't go anywhere. They're just, they're really starting all over. And, they got one of their own players that they hope they can get the fans behind it and maybe get some momentum going. And like we say, like Don is saying, we'll see what the draft brings. They should get some good choices. So they have some good numbers. So maybe they can regroup some, but it was just a lost year with Lovey, and I think that's almost the way it was intended.
Hey, Mr. King, sorry to interrupt you. I unfortunately got an emergency situation. I need to jump off kind of urgently.
Okay.
Appreciate you guys. Sorry to jump off this way, but good to see everybody, and I'm going to see you guys again soon. All right.
All right, man.
Okay.
You have a good night,
man.
Demetrius,
Right.
and prayers and thoughts with you, my man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Reggie, if they don't win a championship next season, did the Broncos give up too much for the rights to Sean Payton? And were the Saints the real winners in this trade?
This is hard to say because the Broncos are a very unique situation in the league in the sense of their main guy being the main problem. If Russell Wilson doesn't turn it around, doesn't matter what Sean Payton does. It's the issue in Denver, in my opinion, because you look at their roster, they don't have a bad roster. It's just Russell Wilson. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if the slippers come off. The guy just forgot how to play football all of a sudden. Doesn't seem likely from a statistical standpoint. But he just looked awful. He looked awful last year. Unless Russell, I don't know what Sean's going to do to change Russell. I'm not sure. From what I hear, they're taking the private jets and parking spaces away and all that stuff, and maybe that helps to bring him down, humble him down a little bit, and bring him down to maybe like a team level.
They're going to close his office?
Yeah, maybe you have to. Maybe this is stuff, and then you had all this stuff, and you were a bum last year. So I don't. Maybe you don't really deserve it. And what does that say to the rest of the team that you can be that horrible and have all these extra things, and the guy hadn't done anything when he had all that stuff? So maybe Sean gets in there and takes some of that away. But I think the real tale of the tape is just going to be in Sean's tenure. I haven't seen a contract on him, so I'm not sure what length of time they're giving him. I'm pretty sure, let's say it's 5-6 years like D'Amico just got. Russ could be the one leaving that team in the next couple of years. Sean could still be there, so it'll remain to be seen. I don't know if next year is enough time to say, hey, within one calendar year, Russ has figured it all out and they're good to go now. So me personally, I'm not going to know who won this trade probably until he plays out a good 3 to 4 years of this contract.
What's your thoughts, John? Don?
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that trade?
I think you're correct. I think the Saints might have come out a little bit ahead on that. We'll see. But I just think that, Sean Payton is a proven commodity. And I think that wherever he lands up, if he does ultimately step in Denver, I think he'll turn Denver around. But I think the Saints are they need to get in a consistent play at quarterback like they have with Drew Brees. So maybe having Sean Payton there is not going to, that's a moot point. But I'm really looking forward to see how he ends up in Denver. See how that goes.
Well, what do you think, Mr. Scott? Are you in the Reggie bandwagon that it might be Russell Wilson is gone in the next couple of years?
Well, I don't understand this Payton trade. I mean, didn't Payton quit? I mean, didn't he say, I'm out of here, I quit?
But the Saints still held his rights. It didn't matter whether he quit or not. The Saints still had his rights. He was still under contract with the Saints. That's why they had to give Saints compensation.
So in other words, when he quit, they still had to pay him whether he did anything.
Yep.
How can you quit and still? So that's what I don't understand. This whole transaction. I mean, the man quit the job.
How can Bobby Bonilla still be getting paid?
Because he had a contract.
Well, there you go. Sean Payton had a contract. That's
so
how
Bobby Bonilla didn't quit. He didn't quit.
Evidently, Sean didn't have a quit clause in his contract.
I don't understand how you can quit, and then somebody has a trade for you, and you still are part of their. So that part. I mean, I guess the contract thing. Maybe I just don't understand that. The winner, I think that could be a winner for Denver. I mean, what I saw of Russell Wilson, it just looked like he was just getting smaller by the game for some reason. But towards the end of the season, he seemed to kind of, get back in gear. And with a new coach starting over, it's hard to believe that a guy can just fall off like that and be done. I mean, from the level that he was. So I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to work out. I think it's got a possibility. Sean has proven with a good quarterback, with a good team, that he's a great coach. So we'll see. But I still don't understand how you quit and how these kind of things work in the league. I mean, I quit. I'm done. That's it.
Well, like I said, evidently he had a very good contract. Reggie, although he hired Frank Wright over Steve Wilkes, the Panthers owner says he's trying to end the good old boys network, stating that he's actually hired more minorities, especially women, within the front office of the organizations, and he thinks that's where the change has to start, in the front office. Do you agree with him? And what are your thoughts on the possibility? Because we've talked about this for years, about getting rid of the old boy network. Do you think that he can be successful starting this way, Reggie?
Before I answer that question, I'm gonna get out here after this. I want to say thanks, you guys, for having me on. Before I get out of here, I think this is David Tepper trying to get ahead of it, man. Like this is Tepper. This is Dave Tepper trying to say, although he knew what was coming. He knew what was coming, and this is his most valiant effort to try to get ahead of this. This is a difficult question to answer, only because when it comes to the Steve Wilkes, I'm not saying that Steve Wilkes is a better coach than Frank Reich. I don't really know. I don't really know if he is or not. I'm a big proponent of keeping an interim coach that looks like they've started to turn a corner on a team. I was a big fan of Rich Rashadi when he did it with the Raiders, and didn't get that job, and Josh McDaniel ended up getting that job over him. People seem to like Steve Wilkes. He didn't have Christian McCaffrey. He has Sam Darnold as his quarterback. I don't know what you want from this guy. I don't know what he could have done to possibly keep this job. When it comes to the ending the good old boy network, and by making the hires that Tepper said he's made. If he's made the hires, he's made the hires. I mean, if your other teams, I feel like you might be living in a glass house when it comes to this situation, because then I want to look at your entire executive suite. I look at your C-suite and see who do you have in your C-suites. If you have an issue with what Tepper is doing here, I don't know if it was the best time to bring this up. I think if anything, the timing was maybe not the best to mention this situation as you're introducing Frank Reich. But I can't say that he's like a racist or something, though. He's not done anything for me to say, hey, this guy is just some bigot and he's just hiring who he wants to hire. Frank Reich isn't a bum. I'm not sure if he deserved a job. He got fired 6 months ago, or if that, I'm not sure how long he had that Indiana job before Jeff Saturday stepped in there, but he got fired not too long ago. And the same thing with kind of Kellen Moore. It's like you have a job in like a half an hour, you got a job half an hour later. This is bigger than just the Panthers and their head coach hire. I think sometimes when it comes to us referencing some of these networks, there is maybe some racism that is involved in one hand, and then there's just familiarity in another hand. You just hiring who you're familiar with, hiring who your friends recommend to you. So I don't know. I think the language used maybe could have been a little bit different. I don't have a huge problem with the Frank Reich hire over Steve Wilkes, but I do think Steve should have had a chance since it looked like they were a competitive team, though.
Yeah, Reggie, thank you so much for joining us, man. So give us your final thoughts for the evening, and tell people where they can find you on social media, and give your show a plug, man.
For sure. Find me on Reggie ATL. Same thing on Instagram, same handle, Reggie ATL. Just the Stats is my sports show. My partner Eugene Morton, check that out. We release that every Monday. And here's the hoping for just a good Super Bowl, guys. Here's hoping that we get to a good game. I don't want to see anything that look like that college football playoffs. Like, here's just hoping that we get to a good game and that we're not looking for something to do by the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, I purposely put off talking about the Super Bowl and things of that nature just because we got a week in between and don't want to get us burned out before we get to the Super Bowl. So
for sure,
appreciate that, Reggie, and give me an email. Let me know if you can come back next week or Super Bowl week or whenever. And hey, we always appreciate you joining us, man. You have a great night.
I appreciate you having me, fellas. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All right.
Good night.
So, what did you think about the Frank Reich hire and the Panthers owner saying he's trying to end the Good Old Boys Network, Don?
Well, if you're trying to end the Good Old Boys Network, you don't hire Frank Reich. I mean, come on. So I have nothing against Frank Reich. He's had mixed success at most in the NFL. But I just think that if you're going to say we're going to do with the Good Old Boy Network, well, you don't hire Frank Reich. I mean, you just don't. You go out and make a splash hire. You don't,
or you keep the interim coach.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point. And so I don't think, Wilkes had a opportunity to build his team, past what the front office did with, sending McCaffrey out and all that. So I just, I think sometimes people just say stuff to say stuff and not really mean it.
Yeah.
I mean.
What do you think, Mr. Scott? Because I think if we look it up, Frank Reich and Steve Wilkes had the same record. Frank Reich got fired, right? And they brought in Jeff Saturday.
Yeah. Well, which a move that I never understood. I mean, for what, Frank Reich, when you don't have a quarterback, when you're brought in Matty Ice. I don't know. Was he even there when Luck quit? Who was the coach? Was he the coach then?
No, I forget who was the. It wasn't him. I forget who the coach was. But
a catastrophic move like that with a transformational quarterback that all of a sudden he's gone, and you're starting over. I think he kind of got caught up in rebuilding. And then the hire that they had in Indianapolis, I mean, so they just seem to be quite a mess there. Wilkes, I think he deserved a shot. I mean, I didn't see any reason why he wouldn't have. But some of these franchises, they just seem to be real quick to fire people and not be able to sit, because you got to build your team. You gotta have a plan. You gotta give these people time to make it work. And when you don't do it, and you're constantly starting over, that's where you seem to have the problems.
This next question, guys, it kind of takes me back to my playing time, because I never played on artificial turf. I played in the parking lot a few times, but but Don, since you went to the University of Texas, and you might have had a little bit more experience on these different types of turf than we did. Of course, there were all different kinds of turf coming up there, and they were experimenting. It was the new thing. But Don, the Titans ditched natural grass for turf, citing injuries. While some teams are seeking to change back to grass, citing the same less injury. They're saying that there's less injuries on grass. The Titans blame their shortcomings these last couple of years on being injured, and they say that the grass contributed. So Don, what's your thought? Grass or turf?
Well, here's what I thought. So when I was in school, you had two choices: natural grass or astroturf, like the old astroturf, like the stuff that would leave like permanent scars on you if you got the turf burn. Yeah, and I hated that. And it when the sun beats down on it, it gets hot as shit too. So there's that. But here we are in the the 21st century. We have different types of turf. We have I don't think anyone even plays on the old AstroTurf anymore, but you have different types of turf that actually mimic grass almost. So I think it just depends on what kind of turf you get. Now, I'll say from experience, and if I had my rules, I do this. My senior year, we played Penn State in State College up there in Pennsylvania. If you've never been there, it's beautiful. I mean, just
State College is really nice.
It's just real nice. But that turf is the best turf I've ever stepped on. So what the NCAA and professional football need to do, they need to go find out who the turf master is at Penn State and just put that turf in every stadium, because it was soft. It wasn't too thick. It gave out. I mean, you don't really hear about Penn State players. If you think about it, historically, you don't see them losing a lot of people like severe knee injuries. So that's my take.
Mr. Scott, turf or grass?
Well, I'm like you, JK3. I've never played on turf. When I was in high school, it was all grass. But I do remember when the Vikings moved to the Metrodome, those first few years, it was notorious. That grass, that turf was almost like a rug with spots that were kind of turned up like holes in it in the rug. And the great running back, Billy Sims, ended his career on that very bad turf. He had a career-ending injury against the Vikings on that supposed brand. The turf at that time, as Don was saying, they've come a long way, I think, from the turf back in that day, which was some of the first type of turf. That was the first indoor stadium here in Minnesota, the Metrodome. And it was really nothing much more than an erector set with a balloon over it. The thing collapsed several times under the snow cover here. So I think the grass, I never saw any real problems back in those days with the type of knee injuries. But I think now they have made a lot of changes on it. And so, again, I'm not up on playing on it. I've never really experienced some of the new turf that's out there.
Bill, how you doing this evening, man?
Yes, well, I'm finishing one show and starting another.
Yeah, unfortunately, Demetrius had an emergency and he had to leave. Bill, what's your thoughts on the Titans changing back to changing the turf from grass, citing injuries, while other teams are talking about changing back to grass because of the injuries? So what's your thoughts, Bill? Turf or grass?
Yeah, well, I have played on AstroTurf. Not much, not often. I think only one high school game. It was a road game up in Northern Virginia. We played it school in McLean, up in McLean, Virginia, that had turf field, and then a couple of times in college. But I was a special teamer, so I know I wasn't playing too many snaps. But it is a noticeable difference. I mean, and I've been told that field turf and everything, it's better, it's softer, it's all these other things. And of course, what Mr. Scott was referring to is what they call the seams, right? Because it's laid down in these long strips, and then they sort of overlap a little bit, and then you sort of marry them up so they kind of lay on top of each other, and then you sort of seal it up.
You kind of iron them on.
Yeah.
You lay them down. You kind of iron your field.
But it's not right. But it's not a perfect seal, and so it was a seam that his foot went into that blew his knee up so badly. And maybe the only worst turf in the history of the NFL was, of course, in the old Veterans Stadium, where a young man named Wendell Davis, a wide receiver, managed to, I don't know if ever seen else ever do this before, and hopefully never see it again, blew up both ACLs trying to stop on the turf up in Philadelphia back in the day. But yes, I mean, I can't imagine anybody would say, even with the improvements made, would say, oh, I prefer to play on this stuff with the rubber pellets and the this and the that, as opposed to grass, which is made by God.
Yeah. It should be interesting, but not that I think that Derrick Henry has that many more years left on his career due to the punishment that he's taken. But it should be interesting to see when you have a power runner and he's running on turf rather than grass. I still have problems with how you adjust your shoes on, when you're playing on turf one week and grass the next. I mean, that has to take, it has to be a lot of shock to your knees as well as your lower back, pivoting and whatnot. But, maybe that's just me. I'm Demetrius in the Black Sox. Get off my lawn. So, Bill, it seems that the NFL has set the salary cap at $224.8 million per team. That's 16 million increase from the 208.2 million rather that was the cap in 2022. Bill, what's your thoughts? Are we going to see a steady increase in the salary cap? And what is that going to mean to players going forward? Considering the Watson contract.
Well, as I'm sure all of you already know, the salary cap is tied to league revenue. So it will go down only in years where league revenue is down, which has happened really, I think, only twice in the past 50 years. And of course, there's no salary cap 50 years ago anyway. But with the exception of those two COVID years, the salary cap has steadily climbed. So unless there's another, I don't know, global pandemic or mass extinction event or zombie apocalypse, other than those maybe three events, then yes, the salary cap should continue going up.
Mr. Scott, what do you think? Is this going to benefit your team in trying to acquire a new quarterback?
Well, again, the salaries and all, it only benefits the stars. It only benefits the quarterbacks, the superstars. I mean, you got 54 people on your roster. You got guys that are on, they used to call it the taxi squad. I don't know what they call it now. And these guys are making minimum. I mean, so it's the rich gets richer. It's just, it just brings to mind to me the individual, the young man They got hurt in the Buffalo game. I mean, he's been there 2 years. He's not eligible for medical. He's not eligible for a pension. His career is more than likely over. So these salary caps, they go to the top players. They don't go to, well, I think the league's going to take care of him. But then you have a number of players that played 1, 2, 3 games. When I used to do my rehabilitation work, I had workers' comp clients that were football players. And I tell you, they were just like the average person almost working on the street. So when I look at the caps and I look at these things, I just realize it just goes to the cream. That's really what it is. I mean, what does Aaron Rodgers get? $50 million? I mean, how much is that for their cap? What about the guys on the special teams? What about the guys that are reserves? If they don't play those 3 years, and there's a lot of them that don't make it. So, I mean, I don't know. That just brings, when I hear the numbers and the money part, that kind of brings that back to me, and it shows kind of an inequity, I think, with the top players and the players that are just making the roster.
What's your thoughts, John?
Yeah, that makes good points. You have a salary cap, but this it's not what I call an equitable distribution by any means, because take your lineman. The left tackle is going to make more than the right guard, right? The quarterback's going to make more than probably anyone on the team. But I'm not saying I'm supporting kind of like socialist approach to football where everyone makes the same, but I think the disparity in the contracts, like Dak Prescott, I mean, he's highly paid, but look what he did his last outing. So, I'd like to see contracts based more on performance. I think that endorsements need to be added to that, not held again. I don't know how that actually works. Bill probably knows because he's the knowledge, but I think if you sign a $16 million contract with Nike, I think that should count towards your salary, but not against the salary cap, if that makes sense. That's just me.
Bill, I asked a question earlier before you came in. The Broncos, made the deal with the Saints to acquire Coach Sean Payton. So the question is, do you think that if they don't win a championship next season or the season after, well, we're going to say next season, did the Broncos give up too much for the rights to Sean Payton? And were the Saints the real winners in this trade, Bill?
Well, I mean, the ideal trade, both sides should feel like they lost, or at least a little bit lost, and feel like they won. The NFL has gotten to the point where pretty much everybody knows. I mean, sometimes you'll get somebody who'll buy a pig in a poke. Most of the time, the NFL knows a great deal about every player who's been in the league for a particular time. And when you're building a team, most teams sprinkle in, trade, but mostly you're building around the draft, with a couple of exceptions of teams that are aggressive at getting rid of picks, but most hold on to their picks. And you just want to make sure, as you're looking at your team, your roster, you want to say, is there a better player? And can I find this player in free agency? Do I trade for him, or is this player in the draft? And all the best teams, especially teams that consistently are good, figure out how to do that, figure out how to do it and afford to do it, right? Because the salary cap is going up. I mean, it'll continue to go up. We talked about that before, but it's not inexhaustible, right? We just look at what is happening to the Rams. It's happened recently to the Saints, and a few other teams have some work to do, even with the growth of the cap. Some of them are still over it. But if you know what you're doing, if you have competent people, and if you prioritize, you can deal with it.
Okay. The other question that the other guys answered, I want to get you kind of get your view on, and that's although although he hired Frank Wright over Sean Wilkes, the Panthers owner says he's trying to end the good old boy network by his hirings in the front office, and he points to the minorities hires that he's done and the women that he's hired. What's your thoughts on the Panthers owner and his statement, Bill?
You said there was a place there where I couldn't quite hear you. You said something about the Panthers owner.
He said that he was trying to end the good old boys network by his hires in the front office, even though he did hire Frank Wright over Steve Wilkes.
Yeah, got it. Well, I mean, it's possible to do both things simultaneously. I would like to have seen Steve Wilkes be given a real shot to win that job, but they, like so many owners, they erred on the side of offensive genius or whatever. And Frank Reich is a good coach. Of course, many of us remember he was recruited out of Central Islip, West Islip, one of those, one of the Islips out in Long Island by Ralph Friedgen, who at that time was the offensive coordinator at Maryland, to Coach O'Leary. He sat behind another Long Island quarterback kid named Norman Julian Esiason, you better known as Boomer, and then he eventually got the job. And I think Stan Gelbaugh might have been hanging around there too. I can't remember, but all of them from Long Island. Then, is a backup in the NFL, but of course, until recently, held the record for largest comeback in a playoff game since broken recently. But he was a pretty darn good NFL, backup quarterback. Goes into coaching. Good coach, very good coach, good person. I'm not against him, but like I said, I really feel Steve Wilkes has been done dirty, and now dirty 1.5 times. This isn't really that dirty, but the first time, jeez, so Pete. I mean, he goes to a terrible team, gets to draft the potential franchise quarterback who they, I guess decided they didn't want, but he only gets 1 year. When your team is not just bad, but really bad, terrible. I mean, what's 1 year in that situation? You've barely figured out who you want to get rid of in 1 year, let alone who you want to put on the team. So I still wish Steve Wilkes, like I said, had gotten a shot, but Frank Reich's a good coach.
Let's talk about this round 2 of the playoffs. Joe Burrow was sacked, was it 92 times last year? In the last 2 seasons, I'm sorry. So had the Bungles failed Burrowhead, Don?
Well, keep in mind, I know this year they were missing 3 starters to injuries, so that you got to factor that in there. I think that the Bengals are going to be just fine. Burrow he still has not reached the ceiling, I don't think. We're going to see some great seasons for him. And, when our offensive line is healthy, think about the kind of game they gave the Chiefs without their 3 starting offensive linemen. My Longhorn, Joseph Osai, he had that crazy-ass penalty toward the end that helped Kansas City. But, the Bengals had Kansas City on the rope. So, I don't foresee any big changes in what the Bengals are doing. They just need to get their offensive line healthy. But yeah, you got 3 starters out, you're going to give up some sacks. But I think it's a testament to what kind of player Joe Burrow is to have them playing in the AFC Championship despite all that.
What's your thoughts, Mr. Scott? 92 sacks in 2 seasons.
Oh, I missed that. I was distracted.
I said, what were your thoughts? Joe Burrow's been sacked 92 times in the last 2 seasons. Do you think that the Bengals have failed him?
Yes, I think their offensive line definitely would have to do a better job with that many sacks. Bengals are a good team. The Bengals came that close to moving on, and so yeah, you protect, and he's one of the top quarterbacks. I'd say he's probably top 5, at least, if not higher. Definitely, yeah. You got to put a line out there, and plus, that shows you how bad they are because he has some mobility. He has mobility. He's still getting sacked like that. So yeah, that's a huge problem.
Bill?
Yeah. There's such a little finite window to everything in football, right? I mean, obviously, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. being left out of the discussion. Most players' careers are over when they're in their mid late 20s. And so there's everything that you can do, one, to increase your value, maximize your value. You should do it. And, I'll use Senior Bowl as an example. There's 2 quarterbacks who had injuries that prevented them from participating. One didn't come. The other one is there now and, getting coached up, asking good questions, so while the ACL, I think, is still going to prevent, Hooker from going in the second or the third.
We're talking about Burrow.
Yeah, well, I mean, Joseph Lee Burrow, is an absolutely, splendid talent. He's about to get paid a tremendous amount of money. And depending upon if he decides to do a Patrick LeVon Mahomes II kind of thing where they give the team a lot of flexibility and allow them to move back and forth between how much is bonus and how much is guaranteed base salary, that's going to be a big deal because, they've got some guys they've got to make decisions on. Can they hold on to T. Higgins? They probably, I'm pretty sure Boyd's already gone, but they have to look at this. If they do end up doing this massive contract, how many players it will cost them? And, I think they've been thinking about it for a while. They probably already have much of it worked out, but it definitely will require that be a different kind of team going forward.
Bill, I'm going to give you this one first. My homeboy is going to his 3rd Super Bowl in the last 5 years. Can you see Mahomes becoming the GOAT quarterback?
Sure. I mean, barring injury and barring just deciding to leave the game, I don't see why he can't play for 15 to 20 years. So much of what he does, though he obviously has a terrific arm, but so much of what he does is just there, right? He doesn't do anything pretty special to get to it. Now, who knows? Maybe at some point in his life, he starts, thinking differently, acting differently, especially now as a parent. But for the moment, obviously there's going to be a couple more months, but he's focused on just that,
What do you think, Mr. Scott? Is he going to be the GOAT at some time in his career?
Yeah, I think he's close to being that right now. I think that I saw a video the other day of a young up-and-coming quarterback. He looked exactly like Mahomes. I mean, his hairstyle, his throwing the ball. I mean, I think that's kind of prototypes. I can think back to I happened to be in New Orleans many years ago, and I went to the Grambling Southern game for the very first time. I'd never seen a spectacle like that in my life. But Doug Williams was a rookie. I mean, he was a sophomore. He was a freshman. And Sammy White was a senior receiver. And Sammy White scored 4 touchdowns. Doug threw, I don't know how many. And then when I got back to Minnesota, I said, we drafted Sammy White. Oh boy. I saw that. Well, I bring that up to say, you had the Doug Williams, and then to me, Randall Cunningham was just like Doug Williams. I mean, he played the same, he looked the same, he played the same style, and I think Mahomes is going to set. I think he's a upcoming GOAT, and I think you're going to see more Mahomes-style players, even though he's so creative. I mean, the things that he does, he throws a lot of passes behind the line, throws a lot of kind of shovel pass kind of things. But, yeah, I think he's kind of a prototype for some of the next quarterbacks we see.
You concur there, Don?
Yeah, well, I mentioned this before, with guys like Brady and Breeze and Aaron Rodgers, we're seeing a phase out. We have the retiring of the old guys and the new guys. And when I talk about the new guys, I'm talking about Mahomes, I'm talking about Burrow, I'm talking about Josh Allen, I'm talking about Jalen Hurts. We're seeing a changing of the guard per se, and I think Mahomes is probably right now the best of that group. But I think any given year it could be Allen or Burrows, or this year it could be Jalen Hurts. So people kind of underestimate Jalen Hurts, but that guy's a player. I mean, this is the guy who in college after football games he'd go to the weight room and do a set of squats. I mean that guy is dedicated. I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan, not just because he's from Texas, but I don't think he should be overlooked. But yeah, I mean that group of young kids coming up now, that they're legit.
Don, why don't you think Kyle Shanahan challenged that Devontae Smith catch on the sidelines that led to the Eagles' touchdown?
That's a head scratcher. I have no idea what's going through Kyle Shanahan's head. I mean that would have been, you're in the NFC Championship game. At least throw the challenge flag out. You gotta give your team that kind of chance. So I don't know why he didn't throw it, but I would have.
Bill.
Yes.
Well, why don't you think Shanahan threw the flag on that play?
I don't think they saw it fast enough. And that's why you practice going up tempo in those situations. So the player gives either a verbal or equally likely a visual clue to his team of some sort, like, okay, we need to snap this ball right away. And so you run to the line, you get a snap. And at that point, it's a legal play. And you have helped your team and helped your player. One used to be required to stay oft injured. But now the relationships that have been built there with so many others beyond just the big couple, I mean, think about, Steve Wynn or whatever. But there's loads of other. I mean, that's the thing about locating your sport there is there's a lot of millionaires in that proximity.
So, Mr. Scott, do you think that was the turning point of the game?
Boy, there's so many funny things in officiating and what we see in calls. And I think, as Bill said, some of these things, they don't see it quick enough. They can't really, the game is happening fast towards the end of the game. And really, referees in several of these sports now, basketball, football, I mean, they're almost becoming like wrestling. Bill Alfonso, Nick Patrick, these kind of people that don't really see in the calls. Like LeBron the other night, I don't know if you happen to see that. He was fouled at the end, and he had a conniption.
Yeah, he did.
Going around on the floor.
You look like a sixth grader.
But yeah,
I understood his point, but it was a bad look. But go ahead.
So yeah, the calls have been really, and these games have been so close. I mean, really, as we've talked about when we were doing some of the picks, and it's always a half game, a half point, and the games have really been sometimes they hinge a lot more on officiating than I think they really should. I'd like to see them play out a lot of these things. And some of these catches are very tough to really even monitor, whether it hit the ground, the angles, so that's it's, I don't know. As Dad said, when money's involved, strange things happen. So, I mean, I don't know.
Mr. Scott, what did you think of Jalen Hurts' performance?
I thought it was great. I think that's football. I mean, I never forget going to a exhibition Viking game years ago at the old Met with Dad. And I said, Dad, this is terrible. What? Nobody's doing anything. He said, no, we're winning because we're kicking the ball. And every time we kick the ball, they're farther back. So we're winning. And football is, I mean, sometimes it comes down to you don't need the stats. You don't have to throw for 400 yards. You don't have to. You can outplay the team with defense, with field position, which they don't really do a lot of now. They go on fourth down. They go on fourth down in their own territory, which to me, I'm kind of like, how does that work? So no, I thought it was a great, efficient, winning performance.
What did you think about Jalen's performance, Bill?
Well, a lot of good things were mentioned. Some other things. If indeed you are a research facility, then there's a whole entire area, a major one that is dovetails with a lot of, once again, very hired, people who've seen things and heard things and what have you.
So do you think that Jalen's performance fit into a category of where it would be significant importance?
So,
Bill?
yeah. So,
Just talk about Jalen's performance.
well, Jalen Hurts was efficient, right? He didn't do anything spectacular, but he was good, solid, and efficient. And they got half a point or whatever above to make it to the over, right? So, you could play very close to the best if you wanted to. But yes, I think he stays there. I think he's a long-term answer.
What did you think about Jalen's performance, John?
We've seen better performance from Jalen Hurts, but you know what? He won. And so there's that. I think we're going to see some great quarterback play in the Super Bowl coming up because I think him and Mahomes are leaders on our team. I think you'll see him probably have a little bit better game than he had last time. That 49ers defense is tough. Let's give the 49ers credit. I mean, 49ers are playing with their third and fourth string quarterbacks. But the defense is tough. I don't think Kansas City's as tough on defense as San Francisco. So Hurts probably have a better stats.
Yeah, I think it'll be more of a shootout. Like you said, with a fairly stout Philly defense, but like you said, Philly hasn't been up against Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts has a much better chance against Kansas City's defense. Don, are you going to be watching the Pro Bowl Sunday?
If I have nothing better to do, probably. I don't. I just didn't watch girls soccer than flag football.
Unless it's lingerie football,
unless it's lingerie football, that's correct.
Bill, are you going to be watching the Pro Bowl?
I will. I won't be, frozen, gimlet-eyed, watching every moment of it like when I was a kid, when it was, of course, an actual football game. I'll be watching it similar to the way I might watch the Grammys, maybe.
I think Sunday I'll be watching basketball, but we'll see. Mr. Scott, are you going to watch the Pro Bowl Sunday?
Maybe I'll glance at it just out of habit, but other than that, with all these rule changes and all of that, I'm not real hot on seeing seeing it. And I mean, they have a quarterback in there that threw 2 touchdowns, made the Pro Bowl. So
Well, they're playing flag football. They're not even playing tackle. So
yeah, So 2 touchdowns. I mean, you're an all-pro. Go.
uh, Bill, final thoughts for the night, man.
So, for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know that today is the first day. Well, obviously not just Black History Month, but also Black Football History Month. I just wrapped up my article on. Well, this is a name that you'll know, Mr. Scott, Bobby Marshall. Robert Wells,
University of Minnesota. Yeah,
sure. Robert Wells Marshall was a high-level athlete in more sports than any other high-level athlete I can think of. He was a terrific tennis player. He won. He was a very promising bike racer. Won a bunch of bike races. Track and field, wrestling, baseball, football, basketball, of course, and competed until after his 60th birthday. He was still playing in a grain inspectors league. I think is what he was in by that point. But truly one of the greatest all-around athletes the world's ever seen. He was fast, smart, strong, had tremendous agility and power and balance. He played end, which in those days, they made those distinctions between tight end and split end, and that's both. And of course, then that was in the time that he's living. He did a lot of firsts. First Black high school coach in the state. He was the first Black college coach, other than HBCU. Unfortunately, history has not remembered him as richly or distinctly as he should have been. He should be one of the best known players in the history of the game, even though he only played, I think, 5 seasons. That's not so much his fault, because he unfortunately was well past his prime, well into his 30s by the time the NFL became a thing. But he was an absolutely amazing all-around surrogate mother. He understood contacts and making sure she knew how to back him up. Understood. I mean, that's the thing. When you are talking about what it takes, for the greatness that this person, this singular Robert Wells Marshall had, it's like the Bono's commercial, right? And at the end, you see Wayne Gretzky come on and say, "Bono's hockey?" Record scratch. The difference is this guy was a terrific hockey player, played semi-pro hockey. I mean, there wasn't a sport it seemed he couldn't do. His name does not come up often enough when we talk about the greatest all-around athletes this nation's ever produced. I believe he should at least be in the discussion. So I have a piece on @Team MBS Media and some stuff on my Twitter feed about him. And I'll be doing somebody else tomorrow and, all throughout the month.
Yeah, make sure you put them up on the SPORTSKRIB, and you can get a little more exposure also, or just send them to me, and I'll put them up, either one. Great having you. Glad you could join us there at the last minute, and hopefully we can get a little more in action, especially next week when we start talking about the Super Bowl. Don, final thoughts.
Oh, final thoughts. Well,
go shovel your driveway right now.
We don't have any snow. We just had some ice. We can't shovel that. But so my final thoughts. Well, we didn't really talk about it because NCAA football national recruiting was back in December, but today was another, I guess, part 2. I haven't heard of anyone making any big moves. I think when they moved the national signing day of the first round to December, I think that took some of the stuff out of the one in February. But I know that Texas is still in the hunt for the number 1 tight end in the nation. I think between us and Georgia, and he didn't sign today. From last I've heard, he didn't sign. So hopefully Texas can get that tight end and get some more recruits to that class Sark's put together a pretty good class this year. So
getting ready for that. You gonna be ready for that big move? Is it this year or next year?
We got one more year in the Big 12. The schedule's released. We're actually playing Brigham Young, which in the past has not been good for Texas. Texas has when they play Brigham Young, they usually don't show up to the game. So Brigham Young has our number.
Yeah, I asked everybody else about their team schedule, Don. How did your schedule work out for next year?
It's comparable to the one this year. Our Patsy game is Rice, and then I think we have another one against Wyoming. But then after that, it gets tough. I mean, the Big 12 is, you still have TCU, you got Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Kansas State's always tough, so it's going to be very competitive. Hopefully, Texas can be consistent and do well this year.
All right, Mr. Scott, take us home.
Well, let's see. Just first of all, the Timberwolves beat Golden State tonight, so I'll just throw that out there. And in following up with what Bill had to say, I'm very aware of Mr. Marshall, and in fact, one of the people that I went to college with, actually were roommates, really good friends, played music together. He's a friend of Mr. Marshall's grandson, who will be talking to me about, I don't know if he has any photos or pictures, so it's one of the things I'm going to add to my research in Black history. And with this month, I'm going to be very busy. I have a whole exhibit at a church where they have a lot of our pictures. I'll be speaking at the church actually this Sunday. And I think my grandmother will be looking down and saying, wow, the boy's in church, speaking in church. She'd be ecstatic about that. So that's, so it's going to be a pretty busy month. And I think I'll be speaking also at my alma mater, Mankato State. So yeah, this is a lot of things going on, and hopefully we've got a good, real Super Bowl coming up. And I'm going with Mr. Mahomes. I'm sticking all the way with Mr. Mahomes.
We're going to make our predictions.
When his dad pitched for the Twins, he was at some of the games as a little boy. So I'm sticking with it.
Well, we're going to make our predictions and all that next week for the Super Bowl. But are you going to announce your run for council during any of those meetings?
No, we're holding back. We're holding back. We'll see what the momentum looks like. We'll see what the momentum looks like.
All right. Well, hey, good show tonight. Glad talking to everyone. Glad we could talk a little sports. Look forward to talking to everybody next Wednesday. See you, everyone. And hey, if you got a little time, watch a little sports. Get ready for that big Super Bowl next week. Hey, if you want to watch flag football this weekend, that's up to you. But hey, have a good weekend, nevertheless, and we'll see you here again next Wednesday.
See you guys.
See you next week.